All righty. So welcome everyone. Thank you for arriving promptly. As usual, we're going to wait a few minutes just to ensure that everyone who registered has the chance to come in. And as usual, in the meantime, we have a couple of announcements. If this is your first session, meaning that you have missed sessions 1 through 3, don't worry. We want to inform you that sessions 1 and 2 are already available for on-demand watching. So please go to our website to register to watch both sessions at your convenience. Sessions 3 and 4, which is tonight, will become available soon after tonight. Once we get ready, of course, all that we need to get ready on our end to get you set up for viewing. And as they go up on our website, you'll be able to register to view sessions 3 and 4 through the end of December. So be sure to tell your colleagues to register for all sessions 1 through 4, so they'll be able to catch up and watch all 4 sessions. Okay, the links to sessions 1 and 2, as well as the links to our website, will be added to the chat throughout this presentation. So be sure to go there to see the registrations for both links 1 and 2, and as well as tons of other wonderful sessions that are available on our website. I also want to remind you that PEPSA's mission is to build professional capacity among educators working with students with autism in the state of Florida for the purpose of enhancing the quality of educational programs. PEPSA provides training to any educator employed in public, charter, or private schools who is concerned with providing high-quality educational program to students with ASD. PEPSA, in partnership with CARD, provides Florida educators with meaningful professional development activities that build their capacity to improve the learning outcomes of students with ASD. Some of the ways that we accomplish this are through regional trainings, such as this one, a pre-conference day for educators at the CARD conference, which is coming up in January, summer institute conferences by each of our CARD centers, and our partnership program, which is a mentorship program in which CARD specialists is assigned to a mentor. Through our mentorship program and throughout the length of a school cohort year. We support them through a classroom or school action research project. Some of the benefits to the educator for partnering in this partnership programs include a one-on-one mentorship through action research or the teacher inquiry process, participation as a speaker at the annual and or the PEPSA-CARD Autism Summer Institute conferences, financial assistance. This includes a modest stipend to attend and network and present at the CARD annual conference in Orlando, a $300 stipend annually upon completion each of the 2 years of the program, and also sporadic opportunities to earn modest stipends as monies become available. And we will announce these opportunities as they do become available, as well as materials to support data gathering efforts. So partners receive various materials that assist them with the inquiry. So more importantly, because we are funded by the Bureau of Exceptional Education and Student Services, BEAS, all of our services are free. So be sure to take advantage of these opportunities to let PEPSA help you meet some of your professional development needs. So I really encourage you to go to our website to learn more about the PEPSA program, as well as of all the services that we provide. And thank you for giving us the opportunity to tell you more about PEPSA. And I will now pass it on to Beatrice.
Thank you, Lourdes. I am Beatrice Buck, and I'm the Program Planner Analyst here with PEPSA. So thank you all for joining us tonight. We're honored to welcome Dr. Sylvia Diehl back for session 4, which is the final session of her series tonight. Dr. Sylvia Diehl is retired from the University of South Florida, Department of Communication Sciences in Tampa, Florida, where she taught Augmentative and Alternative Communication, Pediatric Language, Research, and Autistic Disorders, and was the Director of Language and Phonology Services. She now teaches Autism and Social Communication at the University of St. Augustine for Behavioral Sciences. She has a long history of clinical experience, including public school settings, university settings, and clinical settings. She consults for school systems and conducts workshops locally, nationally, and internationally. She has authored numerous journal articles and book chapters, along with numerous continuous education courses for Medbridge Education and the American Speech, Language, and Hearing Association. So thank you again, Dr. Diehl, and I will let you go ahead and get started.
Well, thank you so much. I'm really excited that all of you have made the time today to come again and learn a little bit more about literacy. Tonight, our function is writing, which is a very complex challenge for autistic children. So we're going to start with the writing challenge, the physical writing challenge, and then we're going to move into the content. So why is writing challenging? The physical challenge, one, there are sensory issues with one, how to hold the pencil, proprioceptively, how hard to hold the pencil, what kind of writing instruments are good. Pencils have a little more drag than markers. The writing environment, a little tilted ledge notebook or something helps writing a little easier. There are motor differences. So sometimes we've talked about problems with initiation related to executive functioning. That really comes in here. In fact, I once had a child who knew how to spell almost anything, but according to the curriculum in their little classroom, it was not part of the public schools. In this little classroom, they had to write their name independently before they could move on. It was one of those kind of readiness things. And he had written his name so much that whenever you asked him to write anything, he automatically started to write his name. And that was that initiation coming out in that repetitive motor movement. So the psychologist came to ask me about him, and I said, oh, he can spell any word. And he goes, he could only do his name, which happened to be David, I think. And this was 30 years ago. And I said, oh no, he can do anything. And he goes, oh yeah, he didn't believe me. So I said, well, bring him here and I'll show you. And so he started David, and the guy looked really smug, and I just took his hand and started, I said, spell astronaut, and I just started the A for him so he could get out of that automatic motor movement, and he did the whole rest of the word. I just smiled, said, he has a lot of things you don't know about yet. So that initiation, and then also because of that initiation, print is often more difficult for them than cursive, because printing is a lot of stopping and starting and stopping and starting. However, now in many classrooms, we don't teach cursive, but you may find that that cursive is much easier motorically for them. So we're going to talk a little bit about the language issues, but we're really going to hit the intervention of the language issues a little later on tonight. So language issues are using vocabulary and context, sentence structure variations. Remember, there's a lot of holistic memorizing of things, and so they see sentence structure, but may not be able to use it for their own constraints. Topic maintenance, remaining on topic and not veering off either to something that the topic reminded them of, or their narrowed and restricted interests. And of course, the figurative language of inferences and humor result in quite a bit of problems. I'm going to add one more to that, the anaphora that we talked about. Pronouns are very difficult. Knowing what their reference refers to is almost an inference. So that's very difficult for them and something that makes huge difference in their reading comprehension. Pragmatic and social issues are really true. There's trouble with motivation because one, writing is sometimes physically very hard for them. Two, they really don't understand why. The purpose of writing is not always in their top of mind. That's really something we have to really underline. Writing is a conversation only in written language form. So the perspective of the audience involves a great deal of theory of mind. Who are you writing this for? Who's going to be reading it? All of those kinds of, what knowledge did they have of this before they're reading? So this is really difficult. Inhibition, executive, which is executive functioning, being able to inhibit, which goes back to even topic maintenance, not allowing yourself to free associate when you're writing on topic. And then lastly, good readers and good writers are self-managers. They are able to revise, review, clarify, all of those things which don't come naturally to autistic learners all the time. The impact of learning to write on academic achievement is really strong. And so with all the AI, I'm a little worried that people are going to say, oh, they don't need to learn how to write because they can just use AI. But this is so important. It demonstrates what they know. It allows them to express thoughts and opinions. And we're going to talk about how that affects them in other cognitive ways later. It helps them keep up with the pace of their schoolwork. And part of the problem is if they can't write, they have so much more to do. So at home, so when they are home, they are exhausted because they have given their all every day in school. So when they get home, they really need downtime. They don't need to be doing homework all night long. And I see this over and over and over again. Parents are really almost punished because they come home from work and they spend 3 hours with their child because they can't put out the amount of work. So I really recommend you focus on the quality of what they can do and learn, and make the writing really focus on what they need to learn rather than the, huge amounts of writing. If you can get by with 10 problems in math instead of 20, then do that, because it's very difficult for families to have a normal family unit, to have the good communication and social kind of harmony that they need when the parents are so exhausted from helping with homework and trying to get them motivated to do more work that's not homework, it's schoolwork, right? Okay, so here's some handwriting suggestions. First, remember, let's talk about the environment. The physical writing environment. We're going to talk about the language writing environment in a little while. I often see children in chairs that are way too high for them. Their feet do not touch the ground. And if you have an active child, you have a weeble wobble with your, think how you feel on those high bar stools if they don't have a place for your feet. So please make sure that every child in your classroom is seated in an appropriate chair with a table with the appropriate height. You should have a V like this with your knees and your rear end, right? That is the most stable position. I walked into a class just last week where she had these cute little writing desks, and all these kids were on the floor with these little kind of flimsy, cute little writing desks. And there was no way that they were going to be able to write. They were beginning kind of, they were late preschooler, beginning kindergarten age children. Um, and and so she had spent her own money on these desks, and I felt terrible, but I had to point out that this just was not the place for them to learn handwriting. Notice that there's a little bit of a tilt on that desk. That makes it easier both visually and motorically. And we rarely have supported backs on our chairs in schools, but it would be nice if we are. But if you can just get the right size and their feet in that V position flat on the floor, that would be fabulous. Noise and distractions. This is very difficult to control in schools, I know. But it's hard for them to work on things that require as much connectivity as reading comprehension and writing expects when you're sensorily overloaded. So playing gentle music in the background, possibly talking a little quieter, making sure you have your instructions well organized, all of those kinds of things. Also, as much as getting out of the seat is very distracting, sometimes when kids are doing really focused work, they have to get up, and they're trying to motor plan and get back down. So they may get out of seat during this really concentrated thing. If you can have a way to handle it, a place they can go, something like that. Fidgeting is usually behavior. Maybe they've been sitting too long. It may be a child that just needs a reminder, a visual reminder that that's what it's time to do. But don't always think of fidgeting as bad behavior. Sometimes it's our body telling us we need to restart or something like that. So motor initiation can really cause compensatory movements. I was watching a little guy read the other day, and he was doing some kind of assessment. And so they were just giving him a bunch of cards to read one after another, and he wouldn't be able to come up with it right away. And then he would look away, and they assumed he wasn't paying attention. But I think that was him, because he would come back and then he would finally be able to say the word. So don't always think that that's behavior of not paying attention and things like that. Sometimes it's part of the motor package with the child. It's important to monitor noise levels and distractions when doing writing, because motor planning really requires lots of connectivity. We talked about the structures of the brain in the first week. When you think about reading, how your visual cortex is lit up, and your language areas and all the memories that you have are lit up. Now add another one in the motor planning of writing, along with being able to comprehend all that they're reading, rephrase, and write. So that is really, writing is one of the most complex connective functions that we do academically. Flickering lights, can create seizures, so I'm very careful about flickering lights. And then other students. Now, I don't mean put the autistic student in a corner where it's quiet unless it's absolutely necessary, but please be aware that they need to be able to focus. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about writing instruments and supports. You can get different sensory grips for different sensory like. So I usually give them a couple of things to choose from and see which ones they like. The larger size is much easier to grip. One, because it's a little heavier, a little bigger, not as fine motor, and um, and it makes it a little easier. However, it's not as precise. So, you always kind of have a yin and a yang and everything. So that's what that is. The hand grip of a child with autism is usually kind of wimpy. Either that or they press so hard they break the pencils or the crayons or things like that. That has to do with the proprioception. Drag. Pencils have lots of drag. So if they have that wimpy, they may not even make a mark with the pencil. Markers have less drag, and so it's easier. So a whiteboard with markers is a really good way to start with kids who are having trouble. The more weight, the more control. Always think about, those little cups you get water in the dentist, those little things, and if you squish them, the water comes out. It's really easy. Or the new water bottles, if you still use water bottles, how flimsy they are, so the water all flops out. But if you have a little sturdy, it's easier. And the same is true of writing implements. The more weight, the more control. Physical writing. Writing surfaces, raised lines. If you don't want to pay money for things, you can use puppy paints. You can put glue. They didn't used to sell raised line paper, so I used to spend hours putting glue lines on paper. Visual cues for lines and spaces, red lights, green lights, like you see on the sample on the right-hand side of this slide. Sky ground writing paper, so the light shading over dark shading that you can see where that this is the top of the line and that's the bottom of the line. Bold lines act as a visual cue. It's very hard for them to write without lines in any way. That's usable as an assignment unless they're in kindergarten and just writing their name on a huge piece of paper. Remember, visual cues are always wonderful. Visual boards and screens. There are many alternate keyboards. So if they have, they need a bigger hit, you can do that. These are readily available everywhere. And you can get a much bigger key space so that it's easier for them to hit. However, as they get better, I would reduce that keyboard because they can't really type on those really big keyboards with real small fingers and hands. Occupational therapists used to fight with me a lot about teaching keyboarding early on. Now my great nephew, who's 3, can work the phone better than I can. However, I do think that learning how to write just the basics is worth doing. Just your name. If you can do more than that, that would be great because you get a lot of sensory information from the writing. However, if they have huge motor initiation problems, it's really going to be a long road, so give them an alternative. Some of the common problems on digital keyboards and things like that is repeated key settings. So they like X, so they, and you can change that so it filters the keys and doesn't let you do repeated keys all over the place, or 2 keys at once, or they'll hit other keys when they're in the, they want to hit J, but they're hitting H. So you can get grids for those. Okay, I know I'm doing this quickly, but we don't have all that. We have so much to cover. I want to talk a little bit about hand strength. You know, I talked about that wimpy hand. A little hand strength really helps. So squeezing washcloths, different textures in the bathroom, spray bottles, watering the garden with a spray bottle, hanging on monkey bars can give them a little bit of grip, using Play-Doh, stress balls, hole punchers. Hole punching is really difficult. So if you can get them to like hole punching, that's great. Bubble wrap, clothespins, putting clothespins on things, popping bubbles for accuracy, and just tearing paper. So if they want to be destructive, that's a great way to increase their hand strength. Handwriting programs. It's been my experience that handwriting programs that go with music seem to be much easier for our kids. I like handwriting with tears. I think they have solid programs. They have lots of chants and sound effects, and they have a character that the kids identify with. There's keyboarding programs, which is all I've ever used other than the handwriting programs. There's also phonic programs. It's sometimes pricey, but there are a lot of freebies. So if you just get the manual, you can probably put together quite a nice program, or just buy the songs. A lot of times I just buy the songs. Assistive writing support. So the Kibo keyboard is an iOS keyboard, meaning Apple products, that has word predictions, timing options, select on release, which is when you have kids with motor problems, it helps. Select on dwell, and auditory feedback. It does not have autocorrect. PixWriter is a talking word processor, and there's a picture of that up there. The keyboard is on the bottom. It provides picture support with highlighted text and speech. It does cost some money. And there are little things like when you put but, sometimes you get the picture of a bottom. So you do have some issues with that. SnapType is an absolute wonderful app. You can photograph worksheets, and they can type in on the worksheet from your photo, which is really awesome. I have many high school students who got through using SnapType. TouchType Read and Spell teaches typing and spelling and some reading. It's not really a reading program. It's specifically for autism. It costs money. The thing that there's a lot of good about it. It's very thoughtful in many ways, but I don't like the fact that it's got isolated content. So again, you're reading a sentence that doesn't exist within a lot of content. And for me, because I'm all about language and making functional connectivity, I might use it if I had all the money in the world as an additive, but I probably wouldn't use it as a total program. That's just my opinion, though. Typing. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on typing, but most of my kids type. I gave you some free ones you can try. I love education.com, has lots of free typing games. It has a nice sequence and it's easy to follow. If you have teenagers, kids who are really into certain things, then you may want to use the games that you can find that have those characters or things they like doing. The games I put up top there are kind of similar and pretty simple. They're great for younger kids. Teenage kids, you may want to go into the game zone or something like that. There's a typing speed test. And for my middle and high school students, I'll give them the games and stuff like that. And then I'll say, okay, time to really see how fast you can type. And they love that. They really do. They're only working against themselves. Nobody knows how fast anybody else can type, but they really like it. The only thing about it is you type what's directly in front of you. So you can still look at your fingers and type. So I usually try and put it on a big computer screen where the keyboard's way down low. So looking down at their fingers is not so easy. You know, my mother made me take typing when I was young, and I said, I'm not ever going to use that. No way. And I'm thankful for that every single day. So keyboarding is a way to written literacy for many of our kids. All right. So now we're going to stop and take a minute. Do I have any questions about just the literal physical part of it, not the language and theory of mind stuff?
No questions yet. And I
All
just
right.
want to say that I'm giving ideas as a physical therapist, having worked so many years with pediatric physical therapy in the school setting as well as home, for some of the strengthening activities for hand isolation, as well as strengthening and pincer grasp and all that stuff. But so it's in the chat. I didn't want to.
Well, thank you so much for doing that. I should have
Yes.
used your expertise right away.
No, because you have so much content to do. So just to let you know that if you are watching this, it's in the chat. So be sure to take some notes. Some ideas that I had was
Great.
some of the stuff that you talked about for the intrinsic muscles of the hands, some of the therapody. Just want to say for those who are watching this and don't have access to the chat. So therapody is it's like a Play-Doh, but it comes in different densities. One of the things is not edible, so you would have to be very careful if the student has loves to put things in their mouth, that he or she wouldn't be a candidate for that. They love to string it. Is good for hand and arm strengthening. They love to stretch it into very, very thin, and so if it gets in the clothes, it will stay there forever. Many years of ruined clothes to vouch for that. And again, it's not digestible, so do not give it to a child who is likely to put it in their mouth. If they have an aversion, so in lieu of that, Play-Doh will be great for those activities. Crunching anything, paper, or any making, crunching, tearing, like you said, tearing activities are great. So any activity that you would do, clothespin, and you can use clothespin activities that will be finger isolation as well as gross hand activities to be able to facilitate the pincer grasp. You can give them even a cotton ball to hold between the 4th digit and the 5th digit, or anything that, or and maybe even a cloth paper or something to grasp 2 fingers in here to you can facilitate that, and then that will facilitate the pincer grasp too, so they can write or color or something. If you break a pencil and make it, even those golfers pencils are perfect for facilitating, because there's the bigger the pencil, the more they're likely to use the whole hand instead of the facilitating the smaller the pencil. So if they break I know that we all love those brand new Crayolas, but no, break them. They facilitate pincer grasp. Those are great. What else? Any activity, again, like you said, the pointing. I love as an educator, when I was teaching kindergarten first, anything you can use the clothespin to color matching, numbers matching. And so again, that's with communication, that's where you're thinking. So you could do any of those. So that's a great excuse to use those things.
Yes, yes. I had whole sets of shape matching, color matching clothespins.
Yes. We all did. As I
Yeah.
think of more, I'll add them to the chat.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much. I may hit you a little later for more ideas. Okay, so why is the language part of writing important for our children? First, it's a social activity. We don't really think about writing as a social activity. Many of us don't think about it in that perspective, but it is a conversation using the written word. So we need to make sure that our children, one, understand the communicative act, that it is directed towards a person or many people. make that all a part of what we're doing. Cognitive and affective processing, what we know from the research is teaching spelling can improve comprehension. Now, some of our kids are fabulous spellers and it doesn't improve their comprehension, but they weren't taught how to spell. So what I'm noticing about my older readers who were really, really good decoders quite young, that they don't really understand prefixes and suffixes. They do understand them as add-ons, but they don't understand their meaning. When I did some spelling with those tests with those kids, what would happen is they may get the prefixes and suffixes right, but they'll get the root word wrong. So it's all that semantic connection that will happen. When you're teaching writing, sentence construction improves, and reading comprehension improves because you understand more and more sentence constructions, right? It's almost the genre of writing, just that. Multifaceted component reading really improves reading comprehension. So when we hit all these bases we've talked about, it really, really improves reading comprehension. And we're going to talk about a fabulous overall writing program. How much the students write leads to better comprehension. It was a direct comparison. Self-management approaches got all kinds of connections, improves comprehension, writing, and other types of cognitive and metacognitive processes. So that, learning to wait, not to be impulsive, all of those kinds of things that you have to do to self-manage a topic and all of those things directly transfer into our conversations, into what we do in every day, into our social life. Okay, so I wanted to share this with you just so you could see what we are about to learn something about. Now, remember, this is quite a complex reading program, and so I'm just giving you some tidbits to get you organized and started. But SRS, self-regulated reading strategies, by far the most research supported, both in kids with special ed needs and in typical writers, and in writers with learning disabilities, and in older writers who are way below grade level. So lots and lots of great research by just a fabulous man, Steve Graham. It gives you strategies and support, and it focuses on creating writing community and self-regulation, self-monitoring. So it's really excellent. So I put the website right here. So if you'd like to hook up, there are a lot of whole schools that teach this writing program. There are a lot of companies and things like that that also teach this writing program. Okay, so let's just get the key components of his writing program before we get into the actual intervention. One, it's explicit instruction. It teaches strategies in manageable steps, and that's one of the things that makes this so good for autistic kids and good for children in writing. I actually, when I first found this program and started reading about it, used it for my own writing to make it better, because it made it so less threatening. It really did. Modeling, demonstrate through think alouds. I love think alouds, as long as you have a visual with your think aloud and examples. So it emphasizes metacognition, thinking processes, monitoring, reflecting, making judgments, all those things we were talking about that we need to support. This program does. It has guided practice, collaborative writing, peer feedback, we'll talk more about that later, and small group and individuals. So, and then just like shared storybook reading, which we talked about in series 3, it has a gradual release of responsibility. It decreases support, and it's a vital part of the awareness of your awareness and prompts and support is independence. I think I mentioned this last time, but I can't say this enough. The more dependent our children are on prompts, the less independent they'll be as an adult and the less ability they'll have to advocate for themselves because they don't feel competent. They don't feel autonomous. They have to be prompted by someone else. This population is so ripe for that because of the motor initiation. You know, touch is a motor initiator. So if we come over and we're just touching, that's great when we're prompting and getting them to go. But later on, we need to pull back so they can do it on their own. We need to always be aware of our prompting. Okay, so I'm just going to remind you that this is the text that most of the examples will use. It's just The Boy Who Cried Wolf. I'm not going to read it again, but I wanted to remind you of it. Okay, so first we have to talk about motivation because motivation is key, both in typical learners for writing and in autistic learners. So hang on just a minute, I just need to move this box so I can see. What do we need to ask ourselves when we're thinking about how we're going to incorporate writing? So what opportunities does the curriculum that we have make for making authentic connections? Authentic connections are so important. I remember having this one girl just would not write. And she had a brother overseas. And so we started doing every homework assignment to her brother, putting dear, I can't remember his name right now, Nathan, on the top of everything. And it gave her motivation. It was a made up purpose, but none of the other real purposes were working for her. So sometimes you have to be a little creative with that. If I can, however, I'd much rather it be a natural purpose. So the principal wants to learn about whatever, or whatever you can come up with that will make authentic connections. For the fables, one time I made up a totally made up little kid who was having trouble lying to their parents. And so we were all going to read the fable and learn about lying and then write letters to the little boy why lying wasn't good. And it worked. They loved it. I had a picture taken out of a magazine of this little boy, and I had a whole story about it. How I build a positive writing environment in the classroom, and how I teach collaboration in the writing process. So one, a positive writing environment, first includes the basics environment of being calm and non-distracting if you can, maybe a little music if that's something they can handle. Maybe a genre poster, as we talked about. Having enough time for writing is really difficult in class. So make sure that your writing assignments are within the time that you have. Just curtail what you're teaching so they don't feel rushed. That builds even more anxiety, and writing is very, very, very anxiety producing, and many times. Just make sure your basic rule things is it's well organized, you know what you're doing, that your instructions are clear, all of that kind of stuff. But by far, the most important thing is not to just point out what they did wrong. To do the thing that we talked about in series 3, where you go, wow, I love how you remembered to put all the periods and the capitals there and that kind of stuff. Can we just look at this one thing, and then next time you'll remember to do that too? those kinds of things make all the difference in the world. And teaching collaboration in the writing process, we went over collaborative grouping, attacking it kind of in that way where people have jobs in the collaboration. Maybe they all have the same job, but give them what they can say, what their purpose is, that kind of stuff. Have multiple resources. What resources, texts, interests, technology can you use to expand the writing instruction? I know you have to be careful now. We have lots of bans on texts and things, but you can have fable books for our example. There are also nice videos of fables that you can show as motivation, things like that. What opportunities can I, wait, actually before that, I use video a lot of times to provide them the gestalt of the story, because they're more likely to get the whole idea of the story from the video in the beginning. If you have lots of individual learners and you don't want the whole class to see that, you can send it home if they have a family that could support them so they could watch that online, or you can put them on the computer with some headphones to watch it. Lastly, what opportunities can I create for students to learn from someone other than me? Can parents come in that have an expertise in something? Can community leaders come in? Can other teachers or other students come in and help? When they learn from other people, it adds a richness and a focus and a motivation. All right. Of course, you want to use their narrowed and restricted interests whenever possible. We just had I have a high school kid that loves Disney, which is a little hard because the rest of his peeps don't really appreciate the love of Disney. And so we just took all the teenage Disney characters and had a voting of smash or no way for each one of them, whichever one they thought was cool, and then wrote character building on it. And it was way fun and they all enjoyed it. And he was very motivated. Okay, so now let's see. We're gonna just conclude the motivating part. Propose meaningful opportunities to write. Promote opportunities of comparing literacies in and out of the school. So a balance of digital and school writing, lots of discussion with visual supports, facilitating the management of writing skills, suggest things that will help. I always say things like, I noticed this was a little difficult for you. That's okay. I've got something that will make it easier. Check students' motivations to write throughout the process. Really push students to analyze their opinions. Is this what you think? Why do you think that? That's the stuff our kids need. Check difficulty for students with good and bad results. So when they have good results, I really tell them almost more in depth what I really love that they remembered, and then they remember it again. Bad results, I just try to support their skills in some more practice in that area. Balance individual and collaborative writing. I know I have some kids who absolutely adore being in groups, and I have other kids who will just do anything other than be in a group, including my university classes. If I announce a group project, it's like, ugh. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to talk about is planning. This is the first step in SSRS. And notice, I really like how they've got it in 3 simple steps, right? Free ideas. What do you know about this? Where can I find information? And you write that on stickies or whatever you guys want to do, a whiteboard, whatever, just so they write that down. Sorting. So who are the readers of the text? Remember, who are you writing for? Oh, I'm writing a book for other kids, right? Or what ideas would be the best from all your ideas that you got up here? And then lastly, what order should these ideas be in to make the most sense? So in the free ideas, we can use sensory cluster map organizers like this one. We can use taking notes. We can use concept mapping. This is LiveScribe, which I absolutely adore. You probably can't use it in public schools as much, but in college you can with professor permission, and you certainly can use it in the workplace. But all you have to do is write. So see up top on the writing, it just has cathedral. Whatever the person was talking about at that time, if you hit the pin on that cathedral part, the audio lecture will come up during that time. So it's awesome for those of our kids who have listening comprehension, auditory processing kinds of problems. You can also, text, you can have them, I usually print out as the fable, I'll print it out and have them cross through the redundant information in it and then collapse the list. And then they write a topic sentence to give the context. So if they're taking notes, it's really difficult for them, because think about what taking notes means. It means you're listening online and you're understanding what it is, and then you're putting it in paraphrase form on your notepad while making the letters and the sentences and everything. And meanwhile, while you're doing that, the person's still talking. So not only are you doing all that, you're monitoring what's coming up next, which is really difficult. I have very few people who take wonderful notes. Okay, peer mediation. Peer mediation is incredibly motivating for most kids. And I have them act as a scribe. I have them have shared writing experiences, peer conferences, collaboration or peer writing structures, which is way fun. Peers are wonderful in writing structure and a big part of SRSS. Make sure though that you are creating a positive model, that you have rules about what you can say and reflect on when you're having them give them information. I usually say, tell me 3 good things about it, and I don't have them do the other things. Okay, the second part is translating. So first you're getting ready to write and you're doing graphic organizers, all the things we talked about, brain mapping, all of those. And then you're translating all of that information you gathered from all those resources to the words now. So sometimes if I have kids who don't have great communication skills, I'll have them cut out ideas from magazines or paste pictures in the gathering resources part of things. So for instance, in my friends group, we would talk about different kinds of social things, and they would so sometimes we would talk about likes and dislikes and things like that and what to say, and they would simply, their idea was to summarize it in a PowerPoint by the end of the day using pictures. And they had a great time doing that. And you were surprised at the complex ideation that they had. So the first are the ideas on stage. So decide how to introduce the idea. And I usually ask them to write an introductory paragraph. In that, although sometimes we end up choosing the framework of what we want first, but not always. It just depends on the child. Then we go through and choose words using our thesaurus to dress ideas. So if they have some words on there that maybe are the same as the text or something like that, we would look up other words at this time. And then lastly, we would connect the ideas. So we choose the framework, so the Florida Writes is always, there's an introductory paragraph and then 3 more and then a conclusion in the beginning. So we would choose that framework, and then we go through and look at connectives and punctuation and things like that that are important to the meaning. So let's look at some strategies that teach these things. The graphic organizer. So being able to put whatever you had on your semantic map in some kind of organization for writing is very important. This is one I just came up with. It probably was, I saw it from something else. I don't know, but I think I talked to you about it before. The topic goes in the trunk, the categories go on each branch, and then the details are the leaves, and then the veins are the examples, and the dead leaves on the bottom are not important. So this is one of my favorites. It works for writing. It works for lots of different things. It works for speeches. It works for lots of things for my kids. But that's a graphic organizer is such a wonderful way to get them to take their visual ideas and put them in words. Remember, we talked about choosing versatile, simple organizers, put in keywords for different genres, as I did here, first, next, then, finally, things like that. They have to be able to memorize it and recreate it, because they're not always going to have a graphic organizer right there for standardized testing. Other than standardized testing, it doesn't matter. They can just put it in their writing handbook, right? So I use many different things. I use the bottom one just as a brain map, and then according to what genre, I use the different graphic organizers. Okay, we also use theme-related words. So when they're trying to think of different words, sometimes I'll provide some things out of the thesaurus that are under there that they can choose from, because then they don't get so overwhelmed. For older kids, of course, you can have them look it up themselves. I especially do that with emotional words. If I'm wanting them to notice more emotional things, I might give them a related theme words of different kinds of embarrassed or frustrated or angry, words they can use along with that. Sentence combining. Sentence combining has a strong research base, and it's the ability to combine syntactically correct sentences. It develops in normal learners around 7 or 8 years of age. So probably, depending on their language base, it might be a little later, but maybe not, never know. Most studies have shown very effective results in improving syntactic maturity. It works with any context or program, so we're using it with SSRS, but it could be with anything. How much sentence combining is good is under debate. It appears to depend on the abilities the child's ability to listen and comprehend and or their spelling ability. So I usually have a kiddo with pretty good spelling ability and not one with great listening comprehension. So I kind of take it from where they go. If they, I'll read a book that has one kind of sentence over and over again, and then we'll learn that kind of sentence, how to combine it. And if they get that right away, then I don't belabor it for a really long time. But longer dosage is needed for students that don't get it right away. Okay, so then when you're teaching it, this was adapted from Chandler et al. In 2021. First, you identify the important information. So I have two sentences that I need to combine. The boy was a shepherd. The boy was lazy. The first sentence tells me that the boy was a shepherd, and the second sentence tells me he was lazy. I can just move the word lazy to the first sentence, and I don't need a whole second sentence. So I'm going to write, the lazy boy was a shepherd. Now, this is a really nice argument when we're talking about kids that don't like to write. I can say, oh, look, when we're combining sentences, it's less words you have to write to say more things. Isn't that great? So I model using that think aloud and visuals, and then I give guided practice. So maybe I modeled with the book first, and then I took a couple of sentences from the book and did it together. Then I'm going to give them guided practice from sentences in what they read, and then I'm hoping they're able to do it independently. Okay, here's some examples of the kind of sentence combining I do with our wonderful villagers. So using adjectives, the villagers ran, the villagers were excited, the excited villagers ran. The shepherd boy watched for the afternoon. The shepherd boy was sleepy. The sleepy shepherd boy watched for the afternoon. I find that coordinating conjunctions, other than, sometimes and comes in there. And is certainly the easiest one to teach. But do other things like but, because there's a difference, right? The shepherd wanted to play jokes. The villagers wanted him to watch the sheep. The shepherd wanted to play jokes, but the villagers want him to watch the sheep, which is very different than and, right? So this is where they can learn those words. Subordinating conjunction, the boy will be late for work. The boy walked quickly. The boy will be late for work unless I walk quickly. I'm sorry, I don't know why I put on. The mind. Modifying using possessive nouns. Possession is not something that that they do very well, except for mine. They do mine really well. The boy was afraid of a wolf. The wolf has big teeth. The boy was afraid of the wolf's big teeth. Inserting a positives. This is one thing that's a describing thing that I think is really good to teach them. The villagers decided not to answer the shepherd's call. The villagers were an angry mob. The villagers, an angry mob, decided not to answer the shepherd's call. So this really creates a place where you can also put in another independent clause here and make it a really complex sentence once you teach them how to insert that in. It's really lovely. I love sentence combining. Nerd that I am. Okay, the last part is revising, and it's usually what our kids hate the most because they've already written it and they're tired of it and they don't want to do it again. This is where using the computer really helps you because you can save drafts one after another, one after another, but please teach them how to save them so they make sense. Okay, the error hunt. Read it again and what sticks out. I have some kids that are so good at this as long as it's punctuation or spelling, but not so good at this if it's content. I have them read it out loud if possible, because they seem to be, it slows them down enough that it seems to be able to help them focus on what doesn't sound right to them. Sometimes I'll read it to them and I read it slowly. Missing lines. Is there important information missing? What can I add or delete to make it clearer? So I usually put missing lines, or dead leaves, which, because I've used the dead leaves, which are things that don't belong to this part. But you can see each step is just a little tiny step, and it really helps them go through it so it's not so overwhelming to them. And then the last one is quality control. Reread it all the way, and does it convey what they wanted? And I always say, is this telling them what you wanted to say? They always say yes, but after a while they'll start saying, no, I want this word. I was working with not a little guy, a 22-year-old, day before yesterday, and I was teaching him about his brain and what parts of the brain do different things, because I wanted to explain, he has seizures, and I wanted to explain that for him, to me. And it was really interesting when I was giving examples of what the lobes would do. I put him in speech bubbles and thought bubbles because that's how I teach. And he was, oh, no, let's put it this way. And it was great because he was actively participating and writing as we were going along. Okay, so I don't know what happened here. Revision should include, not reflect, include reflection, a clear purpose for writing, authentic audience, peer interaction, student dialogue, integrate reading comprehension instruction, right? So if he's written something that doesn't make sense, you go back and figure that out. Word processing, so helpful, and strategy instruction. So wherever there is a problem, I didn't include things like when do we punctuate or whatever, but I have included some of those in this revision process. So I love this because it's perfect self-management. I have a checklist on the front of an index card, and I have a stack list of index card. So I capitalize the proper words in my essay? Yes, they can check it off. If not, you turn it over and it has the rules for capitalization, so they can go back and check. Same with punctuation. Did I give my essay a title? So then they look. Do I have a topic sentence? So then they look. Did I organize my thoughts into branches? So then they have their graphic organizer and they look. Do I have details to support my branches? So then they look at their branches and see if they included the details in their essay. Do I have an example to support a detail? I don't usually make them have an example for every leaf, every detail, but they should have at least one or two. As they go along, we include more. Did I take out all the dead leaves? So this is something they can do before you even put your eyes on it, right? Peer mediation comes in here again, right? So I really use peers in groups, but I'm very careful again about what they can say to each other and how they say it. They're really all supposed to be cheerleaders, or if they want to say, I have an idea you might like, what do you think? So I have, even for my general ed kids in the class, I'll have little mini scripts. So we're all being very kind to each other. And I make sure I model that constantly because they learn from us. Oops, you know what? I sent the wrong thing. This was not supposed to be there. I'm so sorry. Before we get into video modeling, do we have anything Any questions so far on the SSRS process?
So far, we don't have any questions. I want to remind everyone that if you have questions for Dr. Diehl, please put them on the Q&A section. She really enjoys interacting with the audience, so we encourage you to add your questions to the Q&A so that she can read them live. It will benefit everyone who watches this even after the fact, all right? And again, I want to remind you that I have added some suggestions on the chat for
Yes.
activities to do in the classroom.
That's wonderful.
Tara said something. She says, I like the index card idea, the great way for students to check their work before asking the teacher if they are finished.
Yes, I love that. I can't tell you how much time that saved me, because they would want to show me, right? And I could just hand them the index cards, and and they have flashcards now you can do digitally and then just print them out. So that's really nice, because then if you have a child who's only working on punctuation, you can just have them there, and then I just have the decks kind of put together depending on what we're working on during that time. Okay, I included video modeling because video modeling has been something that I have used as a really motivating part of writing. Lots of times our purpose for writing will be a storyboard for a video, making a commercial, different kinds of things, but it also can be something that we are learning how to do. So sometimes I just videotape the child doing something I really like, a student, an able student doing something I really like, with parent permission, of course. And then I'll show it to the other student, and then we'll walk it through. So I'm just going to introduce video modeling. It is an evidence-based strategy, and it works in a myriad of ways in writing and teaching social skills and almost everything. So there are different kinds of video modeling. Self-modeling is a video of the targeted person showing the target activity. That's the hardest one to get, because if you're teaching an activity, it's hard to take a video of the person who needs to learn the activity doing the activity. So I rarely use self-video modeling unless they've already mastered it and we want to take a video to make him proud of himself. Peer video modeling is a video of peers doing the target activity, and that is fabulous. It works just as well as self-video modeling. Point of view video modeling is the video of a target taking from what the person's doing. In other words, it's a video I would take of revising a paper, but just of the paper from my point of view. It wouldn't be a video of me. So this is good for things like washing hands and riding a bicycle, knowing when to push the brake, things like that. Okay, so first you select the focus for video modeling. So for here, it just depends on what we were going to do. So if I wanted to teach them how to brainstorm, I might give them things that they know and that kind of stuff, and do a video of doing semantic mapping. And that will really prime them for the next time and get them to have a good idea. So consider a motivating theme in the process or the final product, just like we would in writing, right? Select and define the behavior to be developed or modeled. So you select a goal, and our goal would be to teach what we were going to do, teach concept mapping, right? A task analysis, just like anything else, you have to write down. It's a storyboard activity. I have the kids do that if we're teaching something that's not that they already know and we're teaching a commercial. I do it if I'm going to teach them something like this. I gather input from parents and teachers and the child to guide the development of the video model. So if I was going to teach the child something, for instance, I did a video model of how to introduce yourself to people the other day. So because I had a person who was actually wanting to go into marketing in college, and he was very hesitant about how to do that. So we went through that and we did that. And so for that, I interviewed him because he was a college student. But if he was a younger child, I would talk to the parents and the teachers. Strategically locate the camera, which is a lot easier now because we have cell phones and all kinds of things. However, I will say cell phones shake a lot. And I also have to say that that it's better if you have your arms on a tripod so you keep it straight. But highlight what you want. So if you want them to see the words on the board, make sure you're highlighting that and they're getting a good picture. Present each step really slowly, because I can tell you the first few video models I had, they came out fine, but they were so fast that when we came back, I had to almost go by frame to frame for them to see it well. So if you think you're going slow, go slower. Hold the camera steady, eliminate distractions and background noise. Although I have to say, I've done a few in the middle of a classroom and they still worked just fine. Enlist the help of others. Peer models make great actors. I've contacted theater departments in high schools, and one lovely teacher made it an assignment for their students to make a video model of different things I gave them. It was wonderful. So I had all these wonderful video models. Then using a digital video camera, it allows you to print photos from the video, and then I usually take little slides off the video and make a book of whatever we're trying to think of. So for instance, if we were going to learn how to make a concept map, which is the brainstorming part, which is very difficult for autistic kids because they have to come up with creative ideas and new things. So unless they have a big experience base in there, it's hard for them. So I would have almost a within activity made up of cells so they can understand what step we're doing now. And then I might even input different vocabulary that they could use so they can participate in the classroom. Okay, making and editing the video. The actors need to be animated, use appropriate gestures and facial expressions when necessary. I usually don't tell little kids to be animated because they are pretty animated, but I will tell adults to be a little animated. I know I'm real Disney, but most people aren't. Have fun, really, have fun with it. Edit it, honing on the focus of the video model. Make sure that is your focus, because remember, they don't always infer what your purpose is. So state your purpose when you watch it, talk about it when you see it. Take out extraneous tape that may be distracted, but remember to keep the context. The wonderful part about video modeling is it's not rote. It is a little scripted, but it's more natural. It has context. So this helps them to actually be able to act appropriately in social settings. Okay, so then after you've made your video model, watch the video. I usually watch the video with, when I talk to kids with autism, I usually talk with them side to side with the visual in front of me. So the focus is not on the reflection of my glasses or my eyebrows or my hair or my earrings or my top. It's on what I want them to pay attention to. So then when we're watching the video, I'll stop it. And then even the children who don't really imitate audio models or other kids playing and stuff will often reproduce verbalizations from TV and video. So I really like the fact that we can give them an overall framework. I look at this almost as a graphic organizer for brainstorming in this situation. Okay, so we do repeated viewings, supporting the child to learn the specific vocabulary associated with the targeted situations. We pause the video to highlight and target behaviors and expressions. We rewind to review important parts. And what I like about it too is I can say, oh, I don't think I remembered that. And then I can rewind and we can watch it again and they'll go, oh, that kind of stuff. So I don't have to say anything. And then I debrief the child on what they watched, really looking at their prosody and their emotional expression and that kind of stuff to see what we've gotten there. So teaching steps. After you've watched it repeatedly, then you start role playing. You encourage them to role play. So then I might have it in class with what they already have video modeling doing a concept map about. And then the next one, I would change it, giving different words. And then we would role play another time. Communicate to the team so that they can reinforce attempts with modeled behavior. If you have a family that's very involved, this is great for them to do. You can send them the video model at home and they can role play. It's great. It's really great. With practice and rehearsal of the model behavior, the child begins to retain and display the targeted language and behavior that's shown in the video. It really primes them for so much. By the way, there was a pretty strong study where they read the book before circle time for this child that wasn't paying any attention. So the night before circle time, the parents would read the book. And then the next day, the attention of that child just turned around. All of a sudden, knew what to pay attention to, knew what to focus on, and was a good part of circle time. The same thing happens with video modeling. They feel competent, they feel autonomous, and that's part of being self-determined, right? They feel that, and then they're ready to go forward and be a part of the class. Then this is very important. Talk about possible variations of events. So with this one, we did a video model of one thing, one set of vocabulary words. So I would say, look, we could do the same video modeling with what we're going to do next week. We're going to learn about the ocean next week. So let's look at some things you could do. Here, you could go watch The Little Mermaid. You could, do this, do that, things that here's a list of vocabulary words that you could look over and look up, things like that helps them so they can concept map next time. So video model possible variations for viewing after discussing with the child the variations. So with the child that we did introducing themselves, or the adult we did introducing himself, we first did it for professors, then we did it for little kids, and we did it for friends, buddies, and things like that wouldn't be as formal for them. And that was our variations of that. And then role play the variations to reinforce it. All right. So any questions about video modeling before we go to our ticket out the door?
So far, no questions.
No questions. Okay. Well, you guys are very quiet.
Oh, wait, we got Tara again. She says, I missed the third lecture presentation. I have been sent the video PowerPoint. Thank you. How would I go about receiving CEUs once I complete the third video? Okay, we will answer that on our own, but thank you for watching her third presentation. Again, this one for tonight will be available also. We will send that information about the CEUs later on, okay? If you have questions related to CEUs and all that stuff, we answer that on our own. For Dr. Diehl, she answers questions related to that, the presentation.
Okay, well, we'll just go to this, and then if you have a question, you can put it in. So write down 3 things that you will use in your practice in the classroom. Share on the question part. And I hope you have a lovely evening, and thank you so much for sharing your time with me and all the knowledge you give to our children.
And yes, and I am assuming that Tara, if you've made it this far, you have found value on all these presentations, and I know that I have. So I would love it if you share this information and the fact that they are available in the form of on-demand trainings with all your educator friends as well. And Tara says, so I would definitely use the index card as a tool for students to check their work. I will use the graphic organizer. My favorite is the tree graphic organizer. And yes, I will definitely share this information. Thank you, Tara. Thank you,
Thank you, Tara, so much. I appreciate it. Well,
yes.
Thank you all for sharing your evening with me, and I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful week.
Thank you. Yes. And for all of you, again, who have been part of this series, I hope that you have found value. I know for a fact that I have, and I want to thank Dr. Diehl for having been with us and for bringing this wonderful series. I know we're working to bring you back with us for our summer training series here next year in the Autism Summer Institute. So if you have found value in this, be sure to check us back in the summer training, Autism Summer Institute, one of the many ways that we bring value to you, our educators here in Florida. Thank you for all you do to make your classrooms more accessible to our students with autism. And following this, I am going to have Beatrice tell you more about what is to follow.
Absolutely. So just to answer your question, once the on-demand period closes, so if you watch an on-demand training, once that period closes, you'll receive an evaluation in your email, just like you do for the live sessions. And then once you complete that, you'll receive a certificate at the end, and then you can submit that into your districts for credit through them. But just again, thank you to Dr. Diehl. This has been absolutely amazing. I know that I've learned a lot, and I'm sure you all have as well. So just as a reminder, we will have sessions 3 and 4 on demand soon, but we already have released sessions 1 and 2 on demand, and they can be found on our website. There's a flyer that's linked on there that has all the links that you will need. So feel free to check that out, and also some of our other upcoming trainings as well. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. And look out for the survey that will follow this training. Thank you, Dr. Diehl, and thank you. And good night, everyone. Bye-bye.